we all just saw Logan.
Yes, we did.
You know, still hyped from that.
I'm still have a blood rush, blood rage, blood rush. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a bull seeing red. So we're gonna get into pretty heavy spoiler. We're just gonna completely spoil everything.
Oh, yeah.
So if you haven't seen it yet, you know.
This is the warning. Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
warning. Do not watch this until you've seen Logan.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, you know, hasta la cia, but otherwise, you know, stick with us.
And then come back.
And then come back.
Hasta la come back.
Hasta la cia in a hot second.
Peace out.
Yeah.
Okay, so going into our Logan spoiler discussion. Holy crap, this movie was like grade A prime version of Wolverine. This is what we've wanted to see all along. Thank God that Hugh Jackman took that pay cut in order to do the R rating, because there is blood for days in this movie.
Yeah, this is how an X-Men movie should be done. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, it's gritty. It doesn't pull its punches. I mean, you see everything from like hands being hacked off, claws right through the head. Hell, a little girl getting harpooned.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's so absurd. Like I didn't think they could do that with kids. Like, oh my God, she just got like impaled by a harpoon.
They get the nitty gritty details right. Like, you know, when they unleash the claws.
Yeah, there's blood.
There's blood that comes out, and they don't really do that in the original. You know.
Yeah, because they tone it down for the kiddies.
Right. So, initial thoughts on the movies? You like it? Did you dislike it? What do you think?
I loved it. One of the big points that's always hard to do with a character Wolverine who has an obscene healing factor, can come back from pretty much anything, is that he's older. Also, the adamantium in his body, it's a toxic metal, and it's coated in every inch of his body. So it is killing him because his healing factor is diminished over time. So he's dealing with that, and he's trying to live a pretty peaceful life with not his family like in the comics, but with Caliban, you know, the albino mutant that can't stand in the sun, and dementia-ridden Professor X. Or Alzheimer's. He's got seizures and all that.
Did you recognize the dude who played the albino dude, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stephen Merchant.
Yeah.
I remember him.
He's very funny.
I remember
so funny. It was like jarring.
I think the first time I ever saw him was like Hot Fuzz. Can you describe the animal question? A long, slender neck.
I know him from like Hello Ladies, and he's like the funniest dude. I'm like, what?
He is a hoot. I mean, he brings a little bit of that to this movie, but for the most part, he was
pretty funny.
Yeah, he acts as more of an outlet for like Logan's inner problems in the beginning of the film. Because Wolverine doesn't talk about his shit at all.
He extracts it from him.
Yes,
that's good. Yeah,
and you know Wolverine gets pissed off because he's not want to talk about his feelings or his past because it brings up bad memories. That's why he drinks so much.
Yeah. I like that they're bringing like more like, you know, deep cut, like obscure characters into the fold.
Yeah.
Like Deadpool did the Negasonic Teenage Warhead character.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah, and this one I'm like, who's this like, you know, vampiric dude?
Yeah.
Like, this is really cool to like get to know slowly, expanding.
Oh yeah, I mean, the X-Men universe just has such like a plethora of characters. It's really hard not to come up with a few people, and it's great to see some of the outsiders given some credit. Like, you know, even among the kids, the other weapons that were made in the program at the end, they're based off probably some prominent characters in the book. I don't know off the top of my head. It could really be anything. The girl with the ice breath, probably Iceman. There were a few in there with telekinesis.
Yeah,
there was one kid.
Powers.
Oh, that was great. Being strangled to death with grass.
Well, yeah, he took like 15 different powers.
It was they all let out their vengeance on him at one time, and it was righteous to see. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And the girl that friggin' could. It was another girl that could control nature. I think it was more like wind-esque maybe, but she just
sprayed with
hurled a barrage of wood chips and chunks into the sky, which, you know, thought he would just become like a human pincushion, but nope, explodes too.
I was hoping that one of them like could really like talk to squirrels and sick them on everyone. It would later become Squirrel Girl. I'm still waiting.
The origin of Squirrel Girl.
I'm waiting for Marvel to introduce Squirrel.
Dude, I don't think Squirrel is a mutant. I think she's a mutate.
I don't know the difference.
That's a human that later becomes mutated in life. Okay. So it's not a natural born mutant.
Gotcha.
So type 2 mutant.
Yes, like type 2 diabetes. Yes. Well put.
Interesting.
But you know, Logan's not having a fun time in this movie at all. I mean, he's struggling the entire time. There's an air of hopelessness going on. That's like they're 99% done, and they're just barely going.
The theme is hope. That's the theme of it. It's beautiful.
And trying to keep it alive regardless. You know, like
it's very Rogue One, like in that sense.
Oh yeah, and you know, it's like one of the few times you've ever seen. I think the first time in the movies you've seen Logan as a father figure because X-23 is his genetic clone. He's got 2 claws up top, 1 claw below. I think that's awesome. She's a human blender.
Yeah, I didn't see the foot claws coming. That was.
No, well, I mean, I've already known about the character for a long time, so yeah, that's a great addition, but she's never been, like, that young before, which also brings up the horrifying possibility, oh god, she still has a lot of growing to do with her bones in her frame, and adamantium does not give, so that's terrifying.
Oh, man. Is she going to be stuck as a little girl forever?
Or all that growth is still going to happen in the confines of adamantium shell, and she'll be horribly deformed.
Yikes.
Who knows? That's a thing for another day. But I don't know if they like continue to grow. I mean, they were genetically engineered from the get-go, so who knows? You know how much they would continue developing.
Yeah. So, what do you think, Justin?
What did I think?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
So I don't have a deep love for superheroes. Right? I read comics, but not superhero comics.
But this is great because you can offer your perspective as like
I
an
think
outside person.
That's a cool perspective to have.
Oh yeah.
The only comic IP I really love is Batman. Batman is incredible, but the nature of the Batman comics is such that he's a character that different artists and different writers tell mini stories of. You know, Year One, Dark Knight Returns.
Yep. Dude, I love it. The animated movies
they
too,
have
they're
these
great.
mini stories. The animated series, there's so many incarnations of him that they're not just the next Batman anymore. It's just a Batman story, like James Bond. They just wipe the slate clean, and it's just a story featuring that character. That's what I love about it, because there's arcs. There's time to complete arcs, because one thing that limits me from loving superheroes is that the arc goes whoop, and it keeps going, and then issue 800 comes, and it just keeps going.
Dude,
there's no end.
It's hard.
There's no opportunity.
That's why they do. That's why they do reboots occasionally.
Exactly.
You know, to bring about new readers that don't want to deal with.
But that's
decades
sort of
history.
economically motivated, because they need you to keep subscribing, right?
Of course.
But the thing is that Batman breaks that mold in such a huge way for a big IP like that, because there's room for this cohesive story. That's why I love Batman stories, right? Logan does that for Wolverine. They completely strip the canon of the X-Men.
Yep.
And they just say, this is a story featuring the X-Men and featuring Logan and Charles Xavier.
But it's a different Logan story.
It's a different X-Men story. That's what I love about it. It's because it's a whole thing.
Yep.
It's cohesive. You know what I mean? That's what I broad level love about it, right?
It's always fun to see characters you love in a new light, like in an entirely new situation, how they deal.
Well, that's the funny thing for me, is that I don't love the X-Men, but X-Men is the property that I should love the most, because it has the sort of social narrative around it, because it's the IP or cast of characters that has the strongest real life sort of social metaphor.
Oh, absolutely.
Outcast.
Persecution.
Civil rights is all the way through.
Civil rights,
absolutely.
Persecution, Holocaust.
So hot right now.
Yeah, to like immigration, to homosexuality. You know what I mean?
To like registration and control.
Yeah, X-Men.
God, that one's crazy.
X-Men
Wow.
is all about that. It's all about persecution and the feeling of being persecuted. You know what I mean?
It's been that way from day one. Like Days of Future Past was based on an old comic. So
all the comics are like that.
Yep.
The thing is that I've never loved X-Men, and I don't know why, because I should love it. It has all these.
Well, it's because the
through
movies
lines.
are garbage.
Yeah, that's
up to this
true.
point.
But the closest property to me was X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which is nothing.
Wait, what now?
That's the closest.
verse Street Fighter.
Oh yeah.
That's the closest property, X-Men property to me, which shows how much I'm not.
You mean Marvel versus Capcom?
Well, they're both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that just shows how not close I am to this property. But the fact that I love Logan. Like, Logan is my favorite superhero movie ever made.
More than Dark Knight.
Yeah, and one of my favorite movies ever made. Easily top 25.
Okay.
Like, one of my favorite movies ever made. And I'm not a superhero guy. And
it doesn't really come across as a superhero movie per se.
It sets the framework and the context, but it's not necessarily,
Yes.
No, it's not a happy-go-lucky. I mean, at the end, you're not like, the heroes won. You're like, shit.
Yeah, and I Dark Knight has always been my favorite superhero movie. I haven't really loved Marvel's or DC's stuff since then.
That's fair.
But
Although Marvel's been doing a much better job.
Civil
on the
War's
whole.
great. Like Guardians of the Galaxy is great. But they never went to the love status of Dark Knight was always rarefied. And Dark Knight was always my example of, it's not a superhero movie, it's a good movie. Right. I love Dark Knight so much.
It's not, just the superhero genre in itself.
And
right.
sort of...
Because that's becoming a more common label, actually. Like, is superhero a genre of a movie? I know that's...
And Dark Knight is very motivated by the political happenings of post 9/11.
Oh, totally.
America, Bush era, stuff like that, and sort of, spying and stuff like that, and international business.
If I was Bats, I would keep the whole spy gear like the entire time.
Yeah, and
I can see what everyone's doing with their cell phone.
Yeah, and who's allowed to wield power, and that's very on a broad level very interesting and very cerebral, but Logan approaches it from such a personal level that it speaks more personally to me.
I mean, Wolverine in the movie, I mean, he's like a war veteran. He suffers from crazy PTSD. I mean, his body is ravaged by just years of doing what he does. Horrible nightmares. And, the thing that gave him strength when he was younger and kept him alive for so long, the adamantium skeleton, is now his undoing. It's killing him slowly over time. And it's great to see, like, the high Wolverine from his prime get to this point where he seems more relatable than ever.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, it's kind of like this. I liked when he had to. Finding a clone of yourself is kind of a little gauche in the first place.
Yeah,
but if you view it from like this metaphorical, like, okay,
he's facing his past.
Yeah, Logan has a past. He has a lot of baggage, and there's a price for what you've done. In an eventually all catches up to you.
You can't run away from your.
So I appreciated that part of it. I was like, oh, it's
just a young, rage-fueled monster of himself.
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't say one word. Just
no
sticks.
Well, I like that he didn't play the overwhelming, like, he wasn't that huge part of the movie. He was a really main bad guy, and he had like all these fight scenes, but he wasn't like this huge.
No, he wasn't like the friggin' like Deadpool abomination thing from Wolverine.
He wasn't the center point of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did like that. I did like that.
So is that broad thoughts, or did you want to add any more?
No,
I mean specifics I want to go into.
Yeah, nothing I can add. Huge thumbs up and go see it, but everything.
Double thumbs up for me.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about something like the minutia?
Yeah.
The themes.
So moments that we loved, themes that we loved. For me, I'll just start out with the big one and then sort of talk more about specific moments.
Yeah, let her rip.
So the big one for me that makes this movie so utterly genius, like absolutely genius, whoever wrote this, right, is the fact that Eden, is that referenced in the real comics?
Gotta tell you, I'm not super well versed in like the old school X-Men, so I can't. I mean, those comics I'm pretty sure were just made up, like the ones they showed. I mean, they had all the characters and the images and everything, but pretty on point. But I'm not sure if Eden was a legit locale in the comics.
So Eden, the location, the safe haven for mutants that was in the fictional X-Men universe within the movie.
Only 7/7? I'm not buying that for Metascore. Sorry, continue.
That's fine. Eden is a beacon of hope. It's a symbol of belief, right? And the fact that can stand in as representation for worldview of the characters is beautiful, because Logan, at first, he's like, oh my god, he's in the bar, he sees the coordinates, and he's like,
she made this shit up.
Yeah, or she believed it.
She believed it.
She believes this BS. You know what I mean? And it speaks so much to his jaded worldview and his lack of belief, right? And Xavier recognizes both sides. Xavier wasn't stupid. He didn't believe it himself, but he believed that she believed it.
Yeah, it was real for her.
Yeah,
didn't want to shatter that.
Logan thought that he believed it, right? Logan thought Xavier was also sort of washed up, but he proved that, no, it's real to her. You know what I mean? So that the fact that can stand in as a representation of worldview, I thought that was beautiful. The genius part of that is that it sets it up in such a way that is sort of conventional to other forms of sort of apocalyptic fiction, right? Because we have The Last of Us, right? Did you play The Last of Us?
I've played... No, actually.
Okay. We have, like, I Am Legend.
Yeah.
Right? Remember I Am Legend? They're like, oh, we have to get to the safe haven or whatever, right? In Last of Us, we have to find the fireflies.
It's like the oasis in the desert.
Abstract symbol of hope that sometimes it's like a real thing and sometimes it's not, whatever, right? I haven't read The Road. I'd imagine they're going somewhere. Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which inspired things like The Last of Us. So that's a sort of conventional means of displaying hope in a hopeless world, right? Oh, there's this place that we have to get to. It's Bible stuff of Moses leading his men to the promised land, you know what I mean? So it's this beacon of hope. But the thing is, it subverts it by setting it up as false hope, because we see it through the eyes of Logan, right? Logan, we see this like jaded, oh my god, it's this made up stuff that she saw in a comic.
Well, because Logan's seen all the shit there is to see.
Exactly.
I mean, he's been around for a long time. He's
just like fans like you have, where you've seen it all. right? Oh, it's just sort of make believe and blah blah.
So
right?
he's not willing. I mean, he's already been through the ringer, both like emotionally and spiritually. So he just doesn't have him in him to go out on a limb and think, hey, this could really exist.
Right. But the thing is, it subverts that cynicism by saying that, okay, you're right. That place is fake. People just made it up. They just wrote a bunch of coordinates. There's nothing there, right? He was right in his own right, but they subvert it by saying that this fiction was a beacon of hope for these young, impressionable people, right? And that they converged onto this location out of pure hope and pure belief. You know, when they're being persecuted, this was their only hope. And that this fiction and this representation of hope brought upon real, tangible change for them.
Yeah.
And by subverting that narrative is genius in and of itself. But to layer ladles of genius cheese sauce on top of the genius, the fact that they set the X-Men fiction and the mythos inside of the fictional movie of Logan.
That was fun. I thoroughly
is a meta commentary on the role of fiction itself in our real world and how they can affect change. You know what I mean? And I always talk about how media and art for me is at its best when the theme and the form are inextricably linked together, right? And a story is told in a way that it is only because the theme can be expressed only in that way. Right? A lot of things that I don't enjoy, they sort of divorce the two, right? In this movie, it's the perfect example of the two in unity because this can't be expressed in any other way other than a comic book IP. Because, for example, Civil War or something like that, it's a metaphor for, civil strife in our real world, but it can be expressed in a lot of different ways. It's just in the form of superheroes, and we like superheroes. That's sort of the extent of it. In this, it can only be expressed in the form of the mythos of comic books because of the established X-Men mythos up to this point for decades, that they provide a beacon of hope for real life people who are being persecuted or feel like they're outcasts. Right. So it's this sort of super meta thing that is just the confluence of everything I love. One of the best movies I've ever seen.
You just analyzed the shit out of that.
Yeah, the fiction, it actualized everyone's, just through sheer force of will and became, not so fiction.
It can only be told as an X-Men movie. Right. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, because, their MO is just overcoming nearly impossible odds on the reg.
Yes.
They're trying to save humanity, like in their heyday when the Institute was still around, before, God knows what exactly Charles Xavier did. I'm glad they left that ambiguous because you can see, they know his brain was labeled as like a weapon of mass destruction. In his prime, he can control almost everybody on the planet if he wanted to, but that's just how much self-control he has and how much his morality keeps him chained to his ideals, that he's not willing to stray off that path and go dark route, aka Magneto, us versus them. But it's yeah, and it goes to show you how much power Charles Xavier has, and with the seizures, he's causing mental earthquakes, mental shock waves that nearly kill everyone around him.
What was the conclusion that they were trying to make you draw in the past, that they were referencing he leveled a city or something?
I think he killed the rest of the X-Men.
Yeah, it's very yeah. I think that's when he had his first seizure, when that came. So Charles, he's already been old in the Prime movies. The fact that he's still alive, the beginning of this is nothing short of amazing. But yeah, it's implied that. Yeah, he experienced. I'm guessing I would have to say he experienced his first seizure at the Institute, the Xavier Institute, and that killed all the X-Men and who knows how many other people. So he was forever haunted by that. He just vaguely remembers throughout, and he didn't know what he did at the time. He blacked out for a time, whatever happened, and Wolverine wouldn't tell him what went down. But yeah, he was. God, it's just an absurd form of tragedy, but. And they don't say it outright, because you can't say, oh yeah, Professor Xavier killed the X-Men. You can never send that kind of a message, not directly.
Is there anything you guys didn't like about the movie at all, or is it
toward the middle? I guess maybe give or take the pacing a little bit. Just it seemed they were doing character development, and that was great. It just seemed to slow down during that time. But the action aside, the action was excellent. It was fierce. Finely honed, and other than that, I don't really have any intense critique.
And that's another thing I want to comment on, the violence, because this is incredibly violent, incredibly.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not bloodlust.
No.
You know, it's not, oh, look at the cool blood splatter Rambo. Oh, he killed the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, there was laughing at a few kills throughout the audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's not to say that, like, from a cynical view, oh, you shouldn't be laughing at this because it's serious. No, because just like a horror movie, you scream and then you laugh, right? Because it's sort of this human relief thing,
It's
right?
a thematic, like, nervous
and
response.
it reminds me of The Last of Us, because The Last of Us, I love The Last of Us so much because it uses violence in a very self-aware way.
Mm-hmm.
In a world where we have Call of Duties and like all these shooters and killers, right?
We get desensitized to
It's
this.
fun. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fun, right? But the thing is that it's very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Last of Us.
Oh, I don't feel anything whenever I kill someone in Call of
Yeah,
Duty.
exactly. But The Last of Us uses its violence to instill that self-preservation instinct in you, and that's the theme of The Last of Us. Which unfortunately you have not played.
That's all right. Good.
So the theme
rip.
of The Last of Us is all about self-preservation, right? And it emphasizes physical self-preservation and then later sort of emotional self-preservation by flipping it on its head. But in order to instill you with physical self-preservation, it makes your like ammo scarce. You know what I mean? And it makes you sort of get up close and personal, break dudes' heads on glass. You know what I mean? But it doesn't fetishize it. It provides you with a sense of relief of like, oh my god, I got through that obstacle, right? But then it gives way to emotions of, oh my god, what did I do? You know what I mean?
After the survival instinct
what is the
tapers
cost?
off. Yeah.
What is the cost of that? And Logan really reminded me of that, of the way it used violence. And it punctuates it, but not punctuates it with an explanation point. It punctuates violence with commas into run-on sentences. And it's like, do you get it? Do you see now what the cost is?
Yep.
You know
It
what I mean?
constantly reminds Laura,
Of
Laura
perseverance and of just, it uses it very intelligently.
I think it links back to your earlier thing where you're saying that the form or the media informs the theme, where The Last of Us, where you had, by being an interactive video game, you felt the desperation, you felt like you were in the moment, you know. So I think that further enforces your...
And I guess it makes sense that Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. But then Logan is my favorite superhero movie of all time.
Yeah, dig it. Valid reasons.
Yeah, so if you've seen any of those movies that you mentioned earlier, like I Am Legend and like those types of stuff, and like was a huge fan or played The Last of Us and was like into that.
I mean, you're just gonna like this
great.
movie in general.
Actually, yeah, in general, it's amazing, but especially those people like I think identify with it.
If you're a pacifist, you might get a little squeamish, but other than that,
yeah, if you're a Miyazaki film lover, then
you might want to stay away.
maybe.
Okay, so in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about specific moments from Logan that we want to comment on or really enjoyed.
Specific spoilers.
Yeah. I have a few. Do you want to start out?
Well, I'm gonna go into the dinner scene because Logan's just one of those movies where there is a beacon of hope in the background because ideally you want that to happen, but it's a pretty rough fucking ride until you get to that point, and there's a lot of bloodshed and despair that comes with the character of Wolverine. It's just intrinsic to who he is. He's just someone that deals with all like the horseshit that comes with life, or the kind of character
He's the
he is.
focal point for evil.
Yeah, he
so
is.
you know that. Okay, when did you guys realize that family was going to die? The ranch family.
As soon as I saw them.
When Xavier was like talking in his sleep, I was like, "That's not Logan. It's over."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So, pretty much the same.
Like as soon as they intervened
hey,
on their behalf and they had a conversation, that's
even
when
earlier
like,
than me.
Ah, shit, it's going down.
Because for me, it was, hey, do you want to stop by for dinner?
Yeah, that was it.
And then Xavier's like, yes.
Yep.
And I'm like,
oh shit.
No. And they're so nice.
They're such good
and
people.
During the dinner table scene, I was like, this is so awesome. It's so human. I love it. Oh, they're gonna die.
Enjoy it while you can.
Oh, it was so heartbreaking. I was just praying. I was like, please let them get out of this somehow.
But that describes Logan's life almost perfectly.
Yeah,
he's had
the crux of it all.
Yeah, for the majority of his life. I mean,
the X.
He is the X in X-Men, more or less. His entire life is just based around more so like hardship more often than not, and he has brief glimpses of happiness and hope just to get it snatched away.
Yeah, I think having them live would have cheapened the payoff at the end.
It would have.
You know,
it absolutely would
reinforced
have.
the hope
I mean,
so
it would have been.
Had to die.
It would have been a little, make you feel good a little bit, but then it would have, dulled the impact of that.
Yeah.
All right. One specific moment for me was near the beginning when first it's revealed that Xavier is in that chamber, right? And then he's sort of feeding him pills and stuff like that. He's sort of, deranged a little bit, losing his mind. And then after he takes the pills, he's talking to Logan, and then Logan's like, "Oh, now you know who I am," right? After he didn't. And then Xavier goes, "I always know who you are. I just don't recognize you.
Mm.
And I'm like,
That
was the moment that I was like, this movie.
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in. Like,
Yep.
this
It
movie.
has me. It's grabbed
this
me.
movie.
Right.
Because, like, you know what I mean? So, not to be too on the nose, but just beautiful. Love that moment. The ranch family, of course, you already referenced. And then one big one was, we already covered it a little bit, but when he's talking about Eden and how Xavier, you know that Xavier knew that it was fake, but he called into the belief.
Right.
And he was like, it's real to her. And that was the first moment I was like, and I was like, oh my god, tears.
Didn't want to crush the hopes of a little
I was just
girl
crying for
that's
a straight
known
minute.
nothing but captivity
Yeah.
and hardship and evil her entire life.
But it's all about belief. And I was like, that's when I tuned in and I was like,
Well, that's the one thing that got all of these kids to that place to begin with. I mean, hope is such a prominent theme in this. You can't escape it.
Yeah.
Even when it's like soaked to the brim with dread and hopelessness, there's the hope will never be lost in the theme of the movie. It just can't be. Because if you're in the audience, if you feel like there's no fucking hope, then that's the point where you feel like you don't want to watch the movie anymore. And that can't exist.
that's true. Because
Yeah.
it would have been very easy to lose.
And it
audience.
walks a very thin line.
That's actually a very good
It
point.
walks a very
Yeah.
thin line. It was like, okay, I've got to believe that, because this is Wolverine, the X-Men, there's one way or another, there's always some decent turnout, some good ending. So even if this is like the first R-rated movie we've ever seen with the X-Men, there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel. It cannot end with everyone
It could have
dying.
not, but to keep for the whole 2 hours and 20 minutes, long movie, by the way, it did not feel like it.
Oh, yeah,
But to
it flew
keep
by.
you on the good side of that still throughout the whole thing is an achievement, because you could have very easily just been like, ugh. You know what I mean?
There's a point where you can't kick the heroes too much when they're down, because it almost feels like, oh, they kicked them so hard they're going to be dead, even if they're not. So what do you really feel like you're rooting for anymore?
Right.
It's like when you get filled up with so much despair, it's like, oh crap, I'm just numb by this for the heroes now. So when you're able to hold on to that very thin string of hope throughout the movie, you don't know when it's going to come, you don't know if it's going to come, but there's still belief that it's there. I mean, that's just...
Yeah. So two quick
Powerful.
moments for me is the inclusion of when they're in the hotel and on the TV there's that Western. I have not seen that Western. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't like any of the famous ones for me, like, Good, Bad, Ugly and like Once Upon a Time in the West and stuff like that. I think it was more obscure maybe. But the director, he did 3:10 to Yuma.
Nice.
So he's like sort of into that Western thing. But it sort of goes back to what I was talking about, how fiction can inform us, right? That's the sort of meta theme of the movie, is how fiction can inform, and how their story is informed by that fiction, and how the director, like, being a director, you have to be a movie lover, right?
I would hope so.
His life was also informed by movies like that movie, right? So it's sort of this meta narrative going on there that I really love.
Well, dude, as a director, your entire outlook on like movie development, movie making, how you just see movies is influenced by all the movies you've seen over the course of your lifetime. You can't escape it.
Did you see what movie that was?
No, not quite yet.
I thought I saw it. It's called Shane.
Nice.
Okay.
1953.
Yeah. So yeah, I've not seen that. Another moment is sort of the culmination of Logan's character arc, in that, and simultaneously Charles Xavier's, because speaking of that belief that Xavier held until the moment he died, Logan, even past that, didn't believe.
Well, I wanted to touch that because he's been through that scenario like so many damn times in his life that he's run out of gas in the tank to do that again.
And that was the low point, because he just lost his mentor.
Yeah.
Essentially,
the one who saved him.
He was calling him dad as a sort of like disguise, but like that's really what the relationship is, right?
Well, yeah, Professor X was the one who got him when he's just a berserk animal coming out of the remains of the Weapon X program, like no idea what his past was, history. And he took him in.
And so
multiple times, actually.
Logan calling Xavier dad. Now, Laura calling Logan dad now is the culmination of now Logan as Xavier for those children now.
The role has been, the baton's been passed.
Xavier was right, and Logan realizes it at the end there, and he's like, this is what it's like. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm already tearing up a little bit,
Yep.
but like, is the culmination of that belief, and Xavier knew it the whole time, and Logan knew it for a second, but that's all it meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's all that mattered. I was secretly hoping for an ending. I was like hoping till the very end that like Logan would take them to across the board and become, like start his own school and become like the headmaster dude.
They do
Essentially
have
that happened, but not
like
in that
for-
way.
right,
Yeah.
right.
more more like spiritually.
Yeah, he'll be with them, but like not with them.
Well, because they do have that storyline in the comics, like Wolverine and the X-Men, after Professor Xavier gets killed by Cyclops when he's possessed by the Phoenix. Actually, he goes batshit nuts with all the power. So Wolverine like holds on to Professor X's legacy and starts his own school called the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning.
I remember that. Yeah.
Very good arc, and it's hilarious to see Logan like do some of his like Wolverine shenanigans as a headmaster.
So do you have any other specific moments that you
No,
want to
I'm
bring
good.
up,
I
John?
think that nails it.
All right, cool.
All right, and that's our show. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you stay with us for the ride next time. My name is Jack Russell. You can reach me at JRustTerrier on Twitter.
And I'm Brad. I'm working on Twitter as we speak.
You can find him at POTUS.
Just
And I'm
tweet
Justin at JHRussell94. Thank you for watching.
All right, see you next time.